Part 1. When energy is gone, motivation stops working. Motivation was never meant for this moment. There are days when nothing feels dramatic, but everything feels heavy. You are not breaking down, but you are not fully present either. Your body moves, but your mind feels slightly delayed. You wake up already tired, as if rest never really arrived. Motivation used to help on days like this, now it barely whispers. The advice that once worked no longer lands. Just try harder sounds distant and hollow. Stay positive feels disconnected from reality. You are not deeply sad. You are not completely hopeless. You are simply drained. This is not laziness. This is depletion. And motivation was never designed for depleted states. Motivation assumes energy is available. It assumes you have something extra to give. When energy is gone, there is no extra. There is only preservation. This is why motivation fails quietly at this stage. Part 2. Why willpower fails first. The cost of pushing a drained system. Willpower depends on cognitive resources. It draws from attention, focus, and emotional regulation. These resources are not infinite. When your system is tired, willpower collapses first, not because you lack discipline, but because discipline is expensive. Every act of forcing requires energy. Drained systems cannot afford force. This is why pushing harder creates resistance. Your brain does not feel challenged, it feels threatened. The harder you push, the more it pulls back. Not out of rebellion, out of protection. Part 3. Your brain is not against you, it is trying to keep you safe. Your brain evolved to preserve energy, not to chase fulfillment. When energy drops, the brain shifts priorities. Efficiency becomes survival. Effort becomes risk. Complex decisions feel overwhelming. Small tasks feel heavy. This is not weakness. This is biology. The brain scans for danger when resources are low. Danger does not always mean physical threat. Sometimes danger simply means prolonged effort without recovery. When your brain senses this, it applies brakes, not to sabotage you, but to protect you. Understanding this changes the tone of everything. You stop blaming yourself. You stop fighting your own system. Part 4. Self-blame makes everything heavier. Why guilt accelerates collapse when you shame yourself. Self-criticism feels motivating at first. In reality, it adds cognitive load. Every harsh thought consumes attention. Every judgment becomes an extra task. Drained systems cannot carry extra tasks. Guilt disguises itself as accountability. In truth, it accelerates collapse. When you shame yourself for being tired, you spend energy explaining yourself. That energy never returns. This is why compassion is not indulgence, it is efficiency. Removing self-blame reduces internal noise. Less noise means more usable energy. Part 5. This is not a motivation problem. It is an energy regulation problem. Trying to fix exhaustion with mindset is like fixing hunger with affirmations. It misses the mechanism entirely. Exhaustion cannot be argued away. It can only be respected. Once you recognize this, a new question appears. Not, how do I feel like continuing? But, what is the smallest way I can continue without harm? This question changes the rules. It removes pressure. It removes drama. It invites cooperation instead of conflict. Part 6. Permission is the real entry point. Continuity without force. Keeping going does not require desire. It requires permission. Permission to act without excitement. Permission to move without certainty. Permission to stay present without feeling strong. Most people wait for readiness. Readiness is a feeling. Feelings disappear when energy is low. If movement depends on readiness, progress becomes optional. Optional progress does not survive fatigue. Continuity begins when you separate action from emotional approval. You do not need to feel ready. You only need to feel safe enough to take the next step. This is not discipline as punishment. This is discipline as care. Part 7. Keeping going without feeling ready. Why readiness is the first thing to let go. Feeling ready is not a requirement for progress. It is a luxury that disappears under fatigue. When energy drops, readiness follows. If you wait for readiness, you stop moving entirely. This is how burnout quietly wins, not through failure, but through hesitation. Readiness is a feeling, and feelings are unstable when you're drained. Building action on feelings guarantees inconsistency. The first shift is accepting this without resentment. You are not wrong for feeling unready. You are only wrong if you make readiness the gate. Part 8. Action does not need emotional permission. Separating feelings from commands. Feelings are information, not instructions. They describe the state of the system. They do not decide behavior. When you confuse feeling tired with needing to stop, progress collapses. Tired does not always mean unsafe. Unmotivated does not mean incapable. It only means energy is low. Low energy requires adjusted movement, not abandonment. You can acknowledge how you feel without obeying it. You can say, "I feel drained," and still act gently. This is not suppression. This is clarity. You stop letting emotions drive the wheel. You let them sit in the passenger seat. Part 9. Continuity over intensity. Why small actions outlast strong emotions. Intensity demands energy you do not have. Continuity respects the energy you do have. Strong emotions fade quickly. Small actions accumulate quietly. 10 minutes done consistently beats 1 hour done rarely. Consistency trains safety into the nervous system. Safety reduces resistance. Resistance is what makes work feel unbearable. When actions feel safe, your brain allows repetition. Repetition is how momentum is rebuilt. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but reliably. Part 10. Lower the cost of showing up. Design actions your nervous system accepts. Every task has an entry cost. When you are drained, that cost feels inflated. Large goals trigger threat responses. Undefined tasks create anxiety. Your system reacts by freezing. The solution is not effort, it is reduction. Reduce the scope. Reduce the time. Reduce the expectation. Make the first step almost trivial. Trivial steps do not trigger alarms. They allow motion to begin. Once motion begins, resistance weakens. Part 11. Time-bound actions, not outcome-bound pressure. Why presence works better than results. Outcomes live in the future. Futures feel heavy to drained minds. Time lives in the present. Time feels manageable. Instead of asking for completion, ask for presence. 5 minutes is enough. 2 minutes still counts. The goal is not productivity. The goal is staying connected to the process. Connection prevents avoidance. Avoidance is what makes restarting painful. When you stay lightly engaged, returning becomes easier. Part 12. Rest without guilt is not a reward. It is maintenance. Rest is not a prize for finishing. It is fuel for continuing. Guilt turns rest into stress. Stress blocks recovery. True recovery requires neutrality, no justification, no internal negotiation, just allowing the system to reset. Ignoring recovery always creates debt. The body collects that debt eventually. Paying it early is cheaper. Sustainable progress demands rest built in, not earned. Part 13. What staying in motion actually looks like. Quiet, imperfect, and undramatic. Staying in motion rarely feels inspiring. It feels ordinary. It feels slightly dull. It feels unfinished.
And that is why it works. Ordinary movement does not demand belief. It does not provoke resistance. It does not collapse when emotions shift. It simply continues. This is how you survive low-energy seasons, not by forcing strength, but by refusing to disappear. Part 14. Reduce the days you have to force yourself. Why survival mode should not become a lifestyle. Surviving is useful when things are hard, but survival should never be permanent. If every day requires force, something is misaligned. Force is a signal, not a solution. It tells you the current structure demands too much. Living on discipline alone slowly erodes the spirit. Not because discipline is bad, but because it was meant to be a backup, not the engine. When forcing becomes routine, exhaustion becomes identity. And identity-based exhaustion is difficult to escape. Part 15. Energy drains where alignment is low. Why some work empties you faster than others. Not all effort costs the same. Some tasks drain you disproportionately. Others sustain you even when you are tired. This difference is not imaginary. Your nervous system reacts to meaning and ownership. When tasks feel disconnected, effort feels heavier. When tasks feel personally relevant, effort feels lighter. This is why motivation fluctuates unevenly. You may feel alive in one area and depleted in another. That contrast is information. Ignoring it keeps you trapped. Listening to it opens options. Part 16. You do not need to love everything you do, but something must belong to you. You do not need passion for every responsibility. You do not need joy in every task, but you do need something that feels like yours. A part of your work that you choose. A part that responds to your input. Ownership reduces internal resistance. Choice lowers cognitive load. When nothing feels chosen, everything feels imposed. Imposed effort drains faster than chosen effort. Even a small area of ownership can stabilize the whole system. Part 17. Why intrinsic drive reduces friction. Effort feels lighter when it feeds something inside. Intrinsic drive does not shout. It pulls quietly. It does not demand discipline. It invites engagement. When curiosity is present, attention sustains itself. When mastery is possible, effort feels purposeful. When purpose exists, sacrifice feels coherent. When autonomy is available, resistance drops. These elements do not remove effort. They change how effort is experienced. Work still requires energy, but it stops draining meaning. Part 18. Design matters more than willpower. Why systems should carry you on weak days. No one can willpower their way through life indefinitely. Strong people burn out too. What protects long-term progress is design. Design removes unnecessary decisions. Design reduces friction before it appears. Design makes the default action easier than avoidance. When systems are clear, effort is predictable. Predictability calms the brain. A calm brain resists less. This is how discipline becomes quiet instead of violent. Part 19. Flow is not a feeling you chase. It is a result of conditions you create. Flow cannot be commanded. It emerges when conditions align. Clear goals reduce confusion. Immediate feedback keeps attention anchored. A balance between challenge and skill prevents boredom and panic. When these conditions exist, effort feels immersive. Time compresses, resistance dissolves. Flow is not motivation itself. It is motivation sustained by coherence. Chasing flow leads to frustration. Creating conditions invites it naturally. Part 20. Stop measuring yourself by extreme days. Why burnout is fueled by unrealistic standards. We often judge ourselves by our best moments. Those moments are not the baseline. They are peaks. Peaks are unsustainable by definition. Measuring daily life against peak performance creates dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction drains energy. Energy loss reduces capacity. Capacity loss deepens burnout. This loop is subtle but destructive. A healthier metric is endurance. Can you continue without harm? Can you return without dread? Can you progress without self-violence? Part 21. Keep going, but don't break yourself. Progress that respects the human system. You are allowed to move slowly. You are allowed to adjust your pace. You are allowed to conserve energy without quitting. Strength is not always visible. Sometimes strength looks like restraint. Sometimes it looks like choosing sustainability over speed. Progress that breaks you is not progress. It is extraction. True progress leaves you intact. Part 22. Quiet consistency is the real advantage, what actually lasts over years. Quiet consistency does not impress. It does not announce itself. It rarely feels heroic, but it endures. It carries people through difficult seasons. It survives emotional fluctuations. It compounds without drama. Over time, it outpaces intensity. Because intensity burns out, consistency adapts. Part 23. You are not here to be forced. You are here to be directed. Forcing implies resistance. Direction implies intention. When you constantly force yourself, you are fighting upstream. When you direct yourself, you align movement with capacity. Alignment does not remove hardship. It removes internal war. Life will always require effort. It does not have to require self-betrayal. Part 24. Keep going even softly. Continuity is enough for now. You do not need to feel powerful today. You do not need clarity right now. You only need to remain present, even softly, even imperfectly. Going gently still counts as going. Staying connected prevents collapse. Collapse is what makes restarting painful. Continuity keeps the door open. Part 25. The final truth about keeping going. You were never meant to run on force alone. You were not designed to live on motivation. You were not designed to survive on pressure. You were designed to adapt, to pace yourself, to move forward without destroying yourself. Keeping going is not about toughness. It is about wisdom. Wisdom knows when to push and when to soften. If you can keep going while staying intact, you are doing it right, even if it doesn't feel impressive, especially when it doesn't.